He's the founder and CEO of the Boise Treasure Valley's preeminent venture capital firm. But along the way, he's built a small empire, auto loans, private equity, a growing investment bank, and he shows no signs of slowing down. Travis Hawks is a husband, a father, and a prolific entrepreneur, but his success comes from finding and funding other entrepreneurs like himself. And to do that, he has to do a lot of meetings. Let's find out about his worst meeting ever. Travis, this is so much fun. Thanks for joining us on Worst Meeting Ever. Tell us, what is it like running the preeminent venture capital fund here in the Boise Treasure Valley?
You know, the best part is every day I'm so excited to come into work because we have a great team. I love what I do, what we do, and I love supporting entrepreneurs and founders. You know, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a founder.
Yeah.
I love supporting other founders, and I always say they're trying to do the hardest possible thing, which is build a business from zero to very large, to scale that business. And so being able to support them through those ups and downs, it's hard. It's really hard. But I love doing that. And that's what drives me every day.
Love it. How many meetings would you say you're typically in a given week?
Oh man, in a given week, 20, 30. I mean, it's a lot because we're meeting with founders, both that we're considering investment or that we've already invested in to follow up. We're meeting with investors and LPs. And then of course there's a lot of internal meetings, which I think is where the biggest danger comes in is with those internal meetings, because sometimes I look around the room and I'm like, this is such an expensive meeting with everyone that's in here right now and their combined salaries. And it can be easy with internal meetings just to make them ineffective, to make them too long, to make them, they're unnecessary, but you're doing them because you have a captive audience.
Right.
If the boss calls a meeting, no one's going to say no. So I particularly try and pay attention to how we're spending time with those internal meetings and making sure that that's effective.
I love that. That's great. Well, okay, so we're not going to ask you to tell us about like the worst entrepreneur pitch ever. That wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
But hit us, tell us about your worst meeting ever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is it okay if I share more than one? And then I guess
why not? Let's go.
You can go with whatever you want. So I was thinking about kind of one that was, inside Capital 11, and then one that was not inside Capital 11. So more where I was just an attendee.
Yeah.
And so maybe we can start with that one. And maybe part of the problem is just, being used to meetings running a certain way and wanting to be efficient. So then when you go to someone else's meeting, you're kind of captive to theirs. But and thinking about that meeting, was very unclear kind of going in what the agenda was, what the goals were, what the expectations were. Yeah. And then in the actual meeting was not well organized, was a lot of getting off track, off topic, at least as it seemed to me, and a little bit of just I'm not sure what the point of all this is and where this is going. And also, honestly, seeing a lot of people in the meeting just not really paying attention, right? And so if you're taking the time to all gather in a meeting, but then people are doing emails or answering texts or things like that, what a bad use of time. So I think the best way to describe that would just be kind of directionless.
Yeah.
For that meeting.
Yeah. If that meeting was a movie, what would it be called?
I don't know. It was just a mess. So maybe waste of time. Maybe that would be. Okay. Maybe that would be the movie, Waste of Time.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I like it. How deep into it were you when you kind of realized this is not going to go well?
Honestly, I was worried going in just because I'm a believer of in those bigger meetings of having an agenda sent out in advance, having again kind of clear expectations, things like that. And none of that was done. So I was a little worried even just going in.
Yeah.
But then 2 minutes into it, I was like, this is gonna be a train wreck, and just not efficient use of time, people not prepared. And partly maybe they didn't know what they should be prepared with.
Right. If you don't know what you're trying to be about, how can you prepare?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you brought up kind of the multitasking aspect, people trying to do email in the meeting. There have been times where I felt man, how rude of it, or how rude is it for people to be, engaged in that kind of behavior? And then on the other hand, sometimes meetings are just so poorly prepared, like you talked about, that it's almost like employees are just kind of like, listen, I owe my employer at least some productivity out of this time. Like, I'll just do something to try to make, to try to redeem the time.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a waste of time, I don't blame people for multitasking, and I've certainly done that in meetings before when I felt like it was a waste of time. I said, "This is a waste of my time," so I'll answer emails. I think I'm, really conscientious of when we're in internal meetings and meetings here at Capital 11 of trying to be efficient and high value so that people don't feel that way. But also, it's hard because I don't want to. I mean, we do have meetings sometimes where I will ban computers and cell phones. Because for certain people, I know it's just too much of a temptation for them to not wander their minds and start checking email and things like that. So if we really need to dig in on some brainstorming and some collaboration, we do have meetings where we ban the devices. And I'm observant when we're in those meetings, look around, and I see some people have their laptops open and they're taking notes on the meeting, or they're doing something meeting related, and that's fine. But then I also, again, will see people that are answering emails or texts, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us about that Capital 11 example that you were talking
about. Yeah, so I think in thinking back to that, and then you always learn through mistakes, and so this was a while ago, but some similarities in the sense of just people coming not prepared. And so maybe that was, partly on us for not better explaining, what the expectations were.
Sure.
And then it was just back to just people not being locked in, so there is kind of distraction, not being locked in. What happened in that meeting that I remember, and has also happened in other meetings, which is one of the things that most frustrates me, is a topic was covered / a question was answered, and then a few minutes later someone asked a question that we had already talked about because they were so not paying attention. Right? And I just want to jump across the table and strangle them, right? So it's, we answer this question or cover this topic, and 4 or 5 minutes later, well, what about this? And kind of look and, are you serious? We just talked about that.
Yeah, when time is of the essence, and then you're spending the time multiple times on the same topic, that's tough.
It's back to wasting time, right?
And
it's back to what you were saying. I mean, it's inconsiderate of the other people in the room that we're paying attention.
Yeah, for sure.
Or come prepared, or those things, and then the meeting is taking longer because of others who didn't show that same preparedness and respect.
And, how does that impact, let's think about how that set of issues, how does that impact the feeling of the meeting afterwards? Do you think people were clear on what was decided, what the next steps were, or did that kind of have a ripple effect into that?
I think it for sure has a ripple effect. And whenever people are in a meeting feeling like this is a waste of time or frustrated about anything, then I think that has that negative spiral effect, where even if you rally and can save it or make it a better meeting, there's still negativity around it. And sometimes it's hard to pull out of it.
For sure.
One thing that we started doing 6 months ago or so is we start meetings with what's called a positive start.
I love it.
Everyone will share, take 30 to 60 seconds to share something positive from that week, either in their personal life or professional life. And it's always interesting, you get to kind of learn about people from that. But the real purpose behind it is, and by the way, it's not an original idea that we had or read it in a book, but the purpose of it is you start that positive flow in the meeting. You get everyone in a positive mindset. And it's also kind of motivating, because when people are talking about these successes, positive things, in their life or in the business, or this great thing happened in business, then it's like, oh, wow, there's good things going on. And it gets people in that positive
and then it
flow.
feeds momentum in
the meeting. And so I think that every component of a meeting matters, and including, having that agenda, having the clear expectations, making sure that it's a setting where people can all feel comfortable sharing, being honest, right? I mean, bad meetings are also a situation where if they feel like they can't speak their mind or be honest. They just have to agree with the boss.
Right.
That's a waste of time. That's not a productive meeting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, okay, so flip the script. Tell us about the best meeting you've ever been in.
Yeah. And I think I could say the best meetings because those ones that are really good all share similar characteristics.
Yeah.
Which is really just a lot of just the opposite of what we have been talking about, which is people coming prepared, clear expectations, clear guidelines. But for me, what's super critical for a good meeting is collaboration. And if it's just me or a couple people pontificating in a meeting, what was the purpose of the meeting?
Right.
I mean, I could have sent out an email if it's just my opinions being shared. So I think when the magic happens in the meetings is when there is collaboration, when everyone's working together, when problems are solved or at least progress is made on problems. And then those meetings end with clear action items, right? And that there is that clarity around, okay, we've had this expensive meeting. We've taken everybody out of doing something else to be together in this room for 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes, whatever it is. And this is what, making it very clear at the end, this is what we've accomplished. This is what we've decided. And these are the action items. And then just as important is following up on those action items. Because people will learn really quickly if there's action items or direction and then it's never talked about again, those aren't real action items. That's not real direction, and they won't do those things.
Right. So, like, talk about like the most interesting or most fulfilling one of those. Like, take us a little bit deeper into like what was the issue at hand? What was the conflict that the productive conflict that needed to be discussed to actually come to some kind of decision there?
Yeah. You know, one thing that we have on a regular basis is just inside our investment committee. And it's good for there to be conflict in investment committee. You know, we don't want one person to say we should invest in this company that's kind of leading the deal and then everyone else to be, oh, sounds good. That's not being good fiduciaries of deploying capital, right? So when we have those investment committee meetings, we want there to be conflict. We want people to feel comfortable, no matter who it is supporting the deal. We want people to feel comfortable questioning the deal. And I think the ones that have been the best are, again, those ones where everybody is speaking freely, honestly, there's collaboration. And then ultimately, you know, through that, getting to a place where we all feel good about the outcome.
And what do you do to try to create that freedom to speak your mind? Like, obviously, there's some intentional stuff that you're doing as a leader to try to make sure that people know that it's safe to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that just starts with the culture, you know, the culture through every piece of the business. And I always say, you know, culture is not a sign on the wall. You know, the culture is what it is and people know what it is. So if you have a culture or an atmosphere where you can't speak your mind, you can't be honest, you can't question things, it's not suddenly going to be okay in a meeting. You can't stand up in a meeting and say, be honest, speak your mind, if that's not the culture in the business. They're going to know that's not real. So I think it starts with every aspect, every facet of the business. And one thing I try and focus on as well is getting away from a hierarchy of, you know, if you're newer to the team or lower, so to speak, on the totem pole, that you're not allowed to have an opinion. Like that's crazy. That's not productive. I want to hear everyone's opinion. I want everyone to feel like they can voice, you know, their opinion, their concern, their questions, because everyone is going to view through a different lens, and there's going to be a lot of value that can come by having that kind of culture.
I remember at one point in my prior company, you know, we just kind of like stumbled upon the fact that we had one manager who basically would coach his people on what they were allowed to say in meetings, and in giving feedback. And it sounded a little bit like, you know, nobody on our team ever like says that anything is less than like, satisfactory or excellent or whatever we're talking about, and I mean, we're into this, and it's like, man, everybody talks like they're happy on that team, but we're not seeing the results that we want to see from that team. And there's this like dichotomy. And once you started digging into it, you started to realize that there was not that atmosphere, even in a company with a culture that tried to encourage that kind of conversation. There was an atmosphere even at the team level to try to drive that conversation. So it's fascinating, like how hard you have to work to kind of keep that culture intact at all levels.
Yeah, I think it again starts with the leadership and the culture, and it's very misguided to have a no bad news philosophy, whether you're talking to investors or employees or your boss or whoever. If you have this no bad news mentality, you're not being honest and transparent, and then it's going to lead to what nobody likes, which is a surprise, right? And so if you're portraying that everything's great on your team, and then all of a sudden it's clear that it's not because there's chaos, that's going to be a surprise, and then you're going to lose a lot of credibility through that. So I think that goes back to being clear with what the expectations are, and you have to lead by example, but also make it really clear to all the team members that we're going to be honest and transparent. We're going to communicate. Everyone can share. Everyone can have a voice.
So, as we wrap up, if we think about people who are, maybe they're early in their careers, maybe they've just been promoted, maybe they're just trying to figure out how to get better at this. Like, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give somebody who is trying to get better or learn how to lead meetings?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that always, looking to other examples and having mentors. I think that people a lot of times are young people maybe starting out their careers or newer in organizations are sometimes scared to ask questions or ask more experienced people for advice. And I think that's also misguided. I think most people are willing to share and, be helpful. And I remember, a few years ago having an intern who now is a key member of our team, that's worked their way into that. But when he was an intern, he had such a great skill and ability to find good moments to come and talk to me or my business partner or others in the C-suite. And, he would understand the room. He would understand timing. He would kind of understand if I was busy and it was the wrong time. And a lot of times he would ask, hey, do you have 10 minutes right now for me to ask you a couple questions? And he would ask a couple questions about that, personal development type things. Like, how do you handle this situation? Or what have you done with this? Wow. And he was taking notes and he was learning, and I've seen him be better because of that. Yeah. So I think, relationships matter, and whether they're people inside your organization or outside, just talk to people. Talk to people who you feel or hear are great at leading meetings or leading organizations, and ask them for their learnings and their advice. Because I can tell you from my perspective, I'm a very different leader now than I was 15 years ago because I've learned a lot, over that time. So that's the advantage that a younger person can have, is they can maybe skip some of those harder lessons if they can learn them from people that have already crossed that path.
I love it. Travis, thanks so much for joining us. You're the best.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Worst Meeting Ever is brought to you by Contio. What if AI could kill your broken meetings? Find out how at Contio.ai.